actually worked out of the block for 3 months earlier this year because we were doing the Claros incubator. So this absolutely amazing. The Claros team is based in the block, and yeah, we just had a great time. We'll be bringing in today from some other teams that did the Claros incubator badge over there. So I am going to be talking about how to build uncensorable marketplace platforms using TalentLayer. We're also going to talk a little bit about some of the problems with platform design in general that we've had over the past few decades and some solutions. So, first a little bit about me. I'm Kirsten. I'm one of the co-founders of TalentLayer. I've been in the blockchain space for about 4 years. Originally was working on enterprise blockchain stuff, so private permissioned, financial tech, that type of vibe. And eventually I realized that a lot of those projects are solving the most important needs that people have, and ended up moving to the decentralized side of things, which I stayed, and also ran actively working with blockchain governance, so generally very passionate about anything around blockchain and human coordination. So, on the agenda today, first we're going to talk about today's marketplace platforms. Then we're going to talk a little bit about building better platforms in general, and then finally a bit about TalentLayer and how we can use some of our tools. So, first chapter, today's marketplace platforms. So, first of all, just wanted to know how many people here have used freelance marketplace before? Okay, most of us. How many of you have used Uber or other rideshare apps? Awesome, nearly everyone. So today's platforms, whether we're talking about freelance marketplaces, telehealth platforms, designer marketplaces, rideshare, are all silos. They're silos for user profiles, silos for reputation, and what happens is they also fragment the market of users. So if you imagine you're using the Uber app, maybe you're someone looking for a ride. Oftentimes there's not a driver available for you, so maybe you'll open up another rideshare app and check things out there. Why do we have to do that? It's because even though all these guys are in the same city, you have supply, you have demand, that supply and demand is fragmented across all these different platforms people are using. The same is the case for any sort of freelance marketplace. A lot of us that are freelancers, we use 2 or 3 or 4 platforms at once just to find enough work or find the right people to hire. So this market fragmentation is, in addition to being bad for the platform, because it basically makes their users leave and go to other platforms, it's also really bad for the end users themselves. Because you basically are just less able to find what you need. And also, reputation fragmentation is a big issue. So if you imagine, particularly on skilled marketplaces, so like a freelance marketplace, if I am a JavaScript developer and I'm looking for roles, oftentimes I'll get to the end of the list. I've submitted applications for all the jobs that are applicable for me, and I have to go to another platform to find enough work. On that new platform, it does not matter that I have a 100% success rating and I've done 100 jobs on other platforms. Shouldn't that mean something? I believe that it should. This is just some of the less impactful issues. Of course, all of these platforms are also centralized. That means at any point they can take away your reputation, they can block your account, they can shadow ban you. They basically have complete control of your money, your data, all of the above, which is risky at the end of it. So, all of these problems are actually bigger than just marketplaces, bigger than just marketplace tech. They actually impact all network effects, startups, all network effect platforms. Okay. So this leads into the next part of the discussion. What about building better platforms in general? Platforms of all kinds. So I believe that all network effects platforms will eventually converge into open graphs. What on earth does that mean? So, you guys know about Lens protocol, right? Does anyone not know what Lens is? So, Lens is a social media protocol. So, it's not an application, but rather it's an open infrastructure, so a data layer for social medias. So you have user reputation, you have social posts, etc., that exist on this lower protocol layer, and then you have many platforms that can be built on top of that. So what that means is you can build, say 5 social media applications run by different teams around the world, but your users can still maintain your same, following, your same profile, and posts. So basically, what this whole graph-style network is it's having one lower-level protocol for user identity and really for liquidity of whatever you need for whatever solution you're providing. And then application layers sitting above it. So this is really a paradigm shift in how platforms have been designed historically, because usually you have the data layer and the transaction layer, etc., all being managed by the platform. There's absolutely no segregation between the network of users and the platform layer. But with this model, you actually have, the data layer being something completely separate, and the platform is just merely existing on top of that, providing all that great user experience, whatever sort of differentiated product that they want. So from an architectural standpoint, usually what you have is the low-level protocol, so Lens protocol, for example. Then you have indexers, which make it easy to access the data from that protocol. And then you have the platforms that are a layer above. So the platforms themselves look really similar to the platforms that we have today. They can be monetized. A lot of times they're businesses, sometimes no. They can be open. They could be private. They could be pretty much whatever you want your business to look like at the application level. The indexers are interesting because these sort of low-level protocols, these graph networks, are actually permissionless. So these things are possible for anyone to build on, and they're also going to exist forever because they're leveraging blockchain technology. So with all of that, you can basically have anyone build indexers to help people access data, and you can also do things like have many indexers that help people access data in different ways. So for example, if you have an open graph infrastructure specifically for ride sharing, and some of the applications only want to pull in data from users that have a KYC identity associated with them, because they want to know if something bad happens on the road, like who do I go after? Well, someone can create an indexer where all of those users that are pulled in must go through KYC in order to be filtered out into the platforms. And then you can also have permissionless indexers that don't care about that stuff. So it gives a lot of flexibility in how you can build platforms. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about a few of these graph-style protocols. So XMTP is one of them. How many of you guys know about XMTP? Okay. So XMTP is a messaging graph. So you can imagine, most of us on our cell phones, how many messaging apps do we have? I think I probably have like 6, because every friend is using a different one, and they always tell you, oh, just download this other app. Wouldn't it be awesome if you can just have, one lower level tech behind that, so it doesn't matter what interface you're using, you can still access all those messages? This is what XMTP's vision is. So it's basically a messaging protocol, so you can build whatever interface you want over that and still be able to access that messaging system. This is also interesting because it's not just like messaging apps that we think of today, like Telegram or something like that, but also the messaging functionality for marketplace platforms, any sort of thing that you might want to build, any sort of application. So really, really cool stuff. Another one is TalentLayer. So TalentLayer is a project that we're working on, and what it is it's a graph network for any sort of work interaction. So work being very broadly defined, so any sort of service relationship. So now, on to building better marketplace platforms using TalentLayer. So in this talk, I'm going to be sharing a little bit about TalentLayer's architecture. It's going to be more so geared to teams that are building marketplace applications, but hopefully, whether or not that's you, you'll still get something from out of it. So, in order to be, the graph for work, what do we need? You basically need all of those nice back-end components that you would usually have in any sort of hiring app, only at that lower level protocol. So for us, this is agreements. So you can think of these as, you are agreeing with a driver that they should drive you around for this fee, or you agreeing with someone that's hiring you for a freelance gig that these are the terms of the work. So there's service agreement, there's messaging, escrow, notifications, dispute resolution, and mutual review, which is the core of the reputation system. And with all of this at a lower level, you can actually have interactions between users on different platforms. And this is where the whole network effect sharing, pooling liquidity for users comes in. So because all of the user profiles, all of the service posts exist at that lower level, you're actually able to be queried into whatever platform you want. Of course, you can have filtering, geo-filtering, topic filtering, depending on what is the use case of your platform. And then if you have, say, going back to the rideshare thing, maybe you have a deficit of drivers on one app and a deficit of riders in another app. They can query in resources from where the other guy has more supply than they have. And then because all of the tech exists at a lower level, you can have that full-on transaction between users on different platforms. And the idea is in the long term, you don't even need to know where that liquidity is coming from. You just need to know that, wow, I don't have to use another app now because I'm getting what I need. And this is really, really good for the platforms because one of the biggest pain points is user flight. No one has been able to solve the chicken and egg problem effectively, even if they have so much money to throw at the issue. Already talked a lot about the Uber application. So now getting into the components. So from TalentLayer's perspective, we tried to design the identity system to be very minimum viable and composable. So it's not designed to be an end-all, be-all identity, exist in a silo. Rather, it's just a unique identifier for the purposes that we need it. So we tried to look at, for all service-related hiring applications, what are these data points that everyone sort of agrees on, that are unifying, and we put those in the metadata for that. You can also extend the metadata depending on your use case, and we've already had a lot of teams interested in using this identity alongside other identities. So for example, you might have a lens profile. It can be great to view someone's social reputation alongside their work history and different applications. So there's a lot of things you can do with other identity systems alongside ours. So we have jobs and proposal system. So this is basically a smart contract that allows someone to post some sort of request. So I'm hiring a JavaScript developer, or I'm looking for someone to drive me around. And then the proposal is basically signaling, okay, we have the resource for that, or I have the ability to fulfill that need, and then the escrow comes next. So if you are having this relationship, money can go into the escrow, and then whenever the work is fulfilled, it can be delivered outside of the escrow. And then dispute resolution, of course. So for pretty much all marketplace applications, dispute resolution is really essential. And the interesting thing is, for most existing marketplace applications, Web3 aside, dispute resolution is really tricky and expensive. No one wants to deal with it, and especially a lot of the teams that are building in Web3, they just want alternative solutions to having to sit a customer service agent behind a place and have them individually review cases. So this is where the magic of blockchain and composability comes in, because we actually have protocols that can handle dispute dispute resolution for us, including Claris. So we got Clement in the back of Claris. So Claris is basically a decentralized court system. So rather than having a very biased person sitting in a chair reviewing whether or not this person deserves to get paid or not, you can actually have a group of people assess your case, which hopefully will provide a much more fair outcome to teams. And then finally, we have reviews. So in most marketplace applications, reputation is extremely important. So you want to be able to know who are these other actors that you're interacting with, and should I trust them or not? And the way that we sort of define this at the protocol level is just mutual review. So this can be basically string content, so like text-based reviews, and ratings as well, depending on the use case. So, TalentLayer has been around for a little bit over a year. So we started off as a hackathon project at ETH Prague, actually. We built the MVP at ETH Paris last year. And now, as of like this April, we went live on mainnet, and since then, we have had a few platforms go live. So there are 2 platforms live on mainnet that have built with TalentLayer's toolkit, and then another 13 that are in development right now. On the protocol level, we've had about like 35 pairs worth of like monetary value, US dollar, go through and paying out workers for jobs completed. For the most part, a lot of the initial use cases people are focusing on are freelance marketplaces, as opposed to decentralized Uber and stuff like that. Generally, that's because it's a lot easier to bootstrap location-independent marketplaces than it is geolocation-dependent marketplaces. So, now just wanted to share a little bit about what you can build on TalentLayer and some of the sort of type of platforms that we're excited to see eventually. Because there's a lot more than just freelance marketplaces that are about. So, TaskRabbit, for example, so this is a platform where you can basically put up tasks like, hey, I need someone to clean my windows, or help me fix my car, like anything like that, and people will come out and do it for you. So that would be really cool. Something like Glovo, food delivery apps, those are cool. So we actually sponsored ETH Lisbon, which happened just a few days ago, or yesterday actually, and someone was working on a decentralized Uber using TalentLayer, which was really cool to see. You can build also, full-time hiring platforms, more simple stuff like Indeed, Upwork, your standard freelance marketplace, or even things like Rappi. So Rappi's big in Latin America, so they also happen to own Glovo now after that acquisition. But basically what Rappi is, it's a multi-marketplace application. So imagine one app and you have a freelance marketplace and food delivery and TaskRabbit and a whole boatload of other marketplaces all baked into one. So because you can do all of this stuff with TalentLayer, it becomes easier to make these sort of marketplace mega apps. Also some like maybe less common things people imagine you can build. You can build things like Amazon Mechanical Turk, which is basically a place where you have micro tasks listed. So, for example, filling out a CAPTCHA, or looking at a receipt and making sure that the AI-generated text of the receipt is actually correct compared to the actual image of the receipt. So stuff like that, really high turnaround, very small scope sort of marketplaces. Also things like telemedicine, super cool, or even things like mechanics marketplaces. Like there are literally so many people out there building these niche, localized marketplaces. We want to see it all. So a little bit, like taking a step back from the actual tech. What can you do in the TalentLayer ecosystem? So, of course, like we are tech for building platforms, right? So, if you have any entrepreneurs in the audience or people that have an aspiration to build a platform, maybe you're building a platform today, we have tech that can support you, help you go to market really fast, and then, of course, also access that nice liquidity at the lower level for users to help fill the needs of your own users. Also, we are actually run by the open source movement. So TalentLayer, we basically from day one have there's sort of been a group of people that really care about the issues. Like a lot of us have felt the pain of these existing marketplaces. A lot of us come from like freelancing backgrounds, so we saw all of the liquidity issues firsthand and care about solving them. So far we've had like 30-something people contribute to TalentLayer, and we basically are looking for any contribution that you guys have. I mean, we're mostly a technical team, so mostly just developers, front end, back end, Solidity, etc. But we've also had people contribute marketing, grant writing, etc. So if either of these things are interesting to you, just let me know. And that's all for today. So here's some contact information. If you would like, I'm also here. We also have other team members, women friends in here. So yeah, we're all happy to chat, and just wanted to thank you again for coming out. Also, if there's any questions, happy to take this as well. Thank you guys.
Thank you. It was great. How do you compare this Nostr messaging layer? You mentioned, I'm not that technical, sorry. You mentioned Lens, but XMPP.
Yeah, so XMPP is the messaging protocol that I mentioned. So I'm not that familiar with Nostr. Do you guys know much about Nostr from a technical level? So from what I do understand, it's a non-blockchain based decentralized network for social.
I think it is blockchain.
It is blockchain based? Okay. So honestly, I wouldn't be able to give you proper answers since I'm just not familiar with it. No.
Thank you. And where does the name come from? TalentLayer.
So TalentLayer is basically because it's a layer of talent, a layer of people that are looking for opportunities. So of course it only like fulfills half of the size of the market, but that was sort of the idea.
If I've understood it correctly, please excuse me if I haven't. So it's almost like an aggregation tool, right? So if you go back to either the example about the messaging or the employment side of things. Mm-hmm. So does it mean that to make it work, people like LinkedIn has to sign up and give you access to all of the roles that they have, and Michael Page does, or are you actually scraping them and aggregating them? Because if they have to sign up themselves, they're giving away some of their brand, because you're just basically in the layer there, and what's in it for them?
Really good question. So TalentLayer does not scrape. So it would actually be the first option. So they have to integrate. However, that does not necessarily mean dumping in your user base. So the really compelling thing about integrating TalentLayer in long term, as the network effect is bigger, is accessing all of this nice juicy supply to fulfill the demand on your side of the market, or to leverage excess supply that you have and still be able to monetize it. So the thing is okay, you might say, well, for something like LinkedIn or Upwork, it sounds scary. Like, okay, maybe I can access this huge network of new users and not have my users go use other platforms, but if I have to change my business model and worry about dumping in my users into this new thing, probably not going to do that. And luckily, they don't actually have to. So you basically have two options for how you can integrate. Either you can do the perfectly native integration, which is every user has an actual on-chain identity. You're basically dumping your users into the network, which is of course really great for users. We believe that this is where the market will head eventually, and that is the way that most teams are building in our network now. However, if you have a big marketplace and they want to access the supply without dumping in their users, what happens is the marketplace itself just makes a single on-chain identity. And then you basically create, so imagine like you have Upwork, right? Upwork's displaying to you as a user a list of JavaScript engineering jobs. What Upwork's doing on the back end is they're also querying in from the protocol level jobs and feeding that into your search results. So you're getting access to more opportunities. If you happen to click on one of the opportunities that was queried in, then don't really know, but what Upwork is doing is they are basically being this on-chain actor interacting with the other user on your behalf. So what happens in the end is Upwork has a single user profile, and maybe that user profile is fulfilling 30 jobs in a 2-hour time span, because it actually, in reality, is this network of thousands and thousands and thousands of workers doing stuff. Was that clear?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like if I'm LinkedIn and let's say I sign up to TalentLayer, and let's say a couple of other guys do as well, and suddenly your network grows, right, and becomes really powerful. Then a job guy goes, a company advertising a job goes, well, why should I do it through LinkedIn and pay them when I can do it directly? So again, it comes back to LinkedIn. It's not it's like giving turkeys the vote at Christmas time. They're not going to vote for Christmas because they feel they're going to be chopped up. So I still struggle to understand why they want to do it. I get it if you're going to scrape it. I completely get that, because you're just taking everything and aggregating it together, and there's nothing they can do about it. And by the way, if they do get a job through it, they get a commission, because that's what they're in it for. They're in it for the money.
So the scraping doesn't really work because those scraped jobs are not executable. Like
Okay.
you can't have an escrow, you can't
Okay.
have messaging.
That's a legal thing.
It's also a technical issue because all of these platforms don't have like public APIs and
Okay.
stuff like that.
Okay.
So I understand what you're saying. So the thing is like the biggest guys, those guys that have this massive network effect, they do not experience as much pain for the liquidity issues as the smaller to medium-sized guys do. But the thing is if those small to medium-sized guys all sort of integrate with this network, then you actually get like, even if the biggest guys never touch you, you still have like 80% of the market share. Not because all the small guys combined have more market share than Upwork, but rather it's because all those users on Upwork are also using all these other guys. And then all of a sudden, these other smaller platforms are able to get them better inbound leads than Upwork is. So it's like the very long-term thing. And then eventually the biggest guys that just don't want to innovate, they're just going to be taken out of the market.
I get that, and sorry, with that logic, that makes a lot of sense to me. But going back to your messaging example, if I'm WhatsApp or Telegram or whichever one it is, what's my incentive? Because we're all big, right? What's my incentive to come into one of your, to integrate with you? Because again, I lose my brand identity, all of those type of things as well.
Yeah, I mean, so honestly, with XMTP, it's not my product, so I'm sure that their team could give you a much better answer. Maybe they talked about this on the internet or something, but I guess just logicking it out, maybe I try to think about email. There's still so many different email vendors, right? And I pay for access to my email. Of course, there's plenty of free providers as well. But most people don't really want to use the free providers because it's sort of shitty user experience. The ones you pay for are just better.
Yeah.
So that sort of leads me to believe that maybe something like an interoperable messaging layer would be similar. I guess when we think about the real reason WhatsApp's able to survive, it's not because users are paying them, more so it's like data monetization and all that stuff. But I mean, at least from a regulatory standpoint, things are not really very favorable for companies that just want to prey on data consumption these days. So I don't know. I think it's just sort of a macro trends thing. Like there's multiple things that could make, specifically in messaging, it would make more sense to have interoperability, but I couldn't really say.
I think it's a great idea. I think it's almost like nirvana. It's just how do you get there, right? Because even though I don't have as many apps as you guys, without any doubt, and I still find it a complete pain in the arse. I've got too many things doing the same thing. So if I could have one thing that did each function, that's awesome. It's just how long it takes to get there.
Yeah.
And then the other question is how do you guys monetize it?
For TalentLayer? So with TalentLayer, we do a 1% transaction fee. So this is on the escrow. So whenever someone's successfully paid, then they get, or then we take the 1% of that.
So you go back to LinkedIn or wherever it is that signed up with you, to claim it from them, or do you claim it from the?
So
from
it's
the
actually
candidate?
all automated, because in order to have like a fully executable job, you actually integrate the escrow system. So with that, well, it's an on-chain escrow, so you just automatically have the payment routed. So with that being said, having these low-level ground networks exist with a fee is actually not smart over the long term, because the thing is like you basically grow this network effect, right? But if you have a fee, then it just incentivizes people to build other networks, right? So over the long term, these sort of things aren't supposed to have fees. Like imagine if the email system had fees. Like no, it doesn't work. So the goal would be over the long term, once there's product market fit, once there's not much more iteration, for it to just sort of have a fee teeter down to something that's like a near zero number, if not actually zero.
Like a Vanguard ETF fund or something. So like not much.
Yeah. So all of this is part of the hyperstructures thesis. So it's a new model for architecting open protocols. There's a really awesome paper about it. It's called the hyperstructures thesis. Yeah, by Jacob Horn. Very much so worth looking into if you want to learn more.